So my name is Jessica Lee Gagné. I'm from Montreal, and I shot the film Boris Sans Béatrice by Denis Côté, which is playing here in Berlin at the indie competition. This film is quite particular when it comes to the cinematography. The director is also quite particular. He doesn't do very normal or commercial films, I would say. There's always a very interesting approach, and he's a very formal director. And for this film, Denis wanted to do something very different than all of his other films. We shot one film before together, before this one. And for this one, he wanted it to be very, very bright and very white. So that was a bit of a concern for me at first, because bright and white is not always easy to do. So all the locations were very, very white, lots of white walls, and we would pretty much want to overexpose everything. So we were going for kind of a surreal and very, very lit kind of ambiance. It almost had kind of a 90s feel to it, I feel, because, you know, everything was a lot more lit in the 90s, and very, you felt the sources, and the idea for this film was to feel the light everywhere, because the main character of the film is basically kind of running from his conscience, and then he starts having this dialogue with his conscience, and he can't hide from anything. So having the entire film very bright made him have to confront the reality of his conscience. When we chose the camera, it was also a choice of medium. So it wasn't just, which digital camera are we going to shoot with? It was also, are we going to shoot film, or are we going to shoot digital? And we decided to go with film. It wasn't the first time Denis shot film as well, so he knew what we were getting into. And also the fact that the film was supposed to be very bright. We wanted whites that could hold up, you know, and like all these white walls, and everything was supposed to be overexposed. And we wanted to keep some detail in this environment. So film for me was the natural choice, and we wanted it to be very robust and very physical like film. So film just kind of naturally gave this look to us, and it was pretty obvious we had to go that way. And the entire film is 2 stops overexposed. So it took a lot of light to do this, because, I mean, if it would have been on the Alexa, it would have been a lot easier. It would have been a lot more sensitive, and it would have been very bright very easily. But we had to light all the scenes a lot, especially night scenes had to also be 2 stops overexposed. And Denis doesn't like shallow depth of field. So there was a lot of technical challenges. I mean, we tried to shoot at 4 or like 4.5 if I could do it, but often I couldn't light enough to give that stop. I mean, the set would become too heavy, and Denis, I don't think, is a director who likes it when it becomes too complex on the technical level either. It becomes in the way of the creation of the storytelling. So I kind of like had to find a happy middle there, and sometimes had to open up a bit more. But that was one of the most interesting challenges of the film, was having to bring it up to that level. So I was always rating the film around 300. And the reason why we shot with ARRICAM Lite, we shot 3perf, just in order for it to be a little bit more budget friendly. But the reason for that camera was for the video tap, just because it was much easier to get a better image. I mean, it was not like what we're used to now with digital. But it was one of the best taps we could get out was with that camera. It's also just well-built and simply easy to use. There's only one handheld shot in the entire film. But it was useful for that one handheld shot. I mean, I thought about changing to a 235 or something like that, but it wasn't necessary. The camera's not that heavy, so I was fine for that. It was a very strict character in the film, and, you know, with very rigid lines, so we wanted something that was sharp. And I couldn't get that out of the Primos. I mean, I think I went for the Primos at first because I was afraid it would be too sharp. You know, I didn't want to, I was afraid to go in the direction I think he wanted to go. So it was kind of my way of going the other way, and then I realized 2 weeks before we began shooting that it wasn't, I saw them projected up on the screen. I'm like, okay, it's not these lenses. So I'm like, I called the producer, and we have to change the lenses. And then he didn't like me at first because it just moved everything around. I was like, okay, fine. And I kind of followed my instinct after that. And those were the lenses of the film. They're sharp, they're strong, and I could, there was a couple scenes in the film where I didn't have enough light, and I could go down lower and still keep the sharpness that Denis wanted. And that made it just a lot, and they made the shoot a lot easier for me to work with those lenses. And it was the ones I was supposed to shoot with. I was just in denial. We did a DI with the Vision Globale. And 2K scan. The colorist is a good friend of mine, Jérôme Cloutier. Worked with him on a lot of films so far, and he actually does a lot of films that come out of Quebec. He's kind of our star colorist, star color grader. And we pushed the image a lot. It took us quite a few days to kind of like understand where we wanted to go with this image. Because I mean, we shot everything overexposed. All the whites were really, really bright, and we didn't want an image that was soft and white. It had to be very hard, so we had to work on the blacks for like a really long time. And finding the balance between these white environments, but still making it dirty, because Denis loves films that have grit and that are kind of more textural. So it was really a complicated image to obtain, especially with white walls. When you go and you try and get that contrast back, and you bring up the image, all this grain comes out of nowhere. I mean, grain is very present in the whites, especially when they're not white, and they're just like kind of like in a high gray. So it was a kind of a balancing act, and there was a lot of green in the film as well. It was a very green film. So basically, when you look at the colors in this film, there's green and white, which is actually kind of strange. I'm very happy with where the film went. It took me a long time to kind of accept where it was going, because it's not at all what is popular right now in imagery. It's got its own identity, and I think Jérôme in the color grade really brought it that step further. It was an interesting process.